Okay, so I'm here to talk to you today about some of the key hot topics that are affecting in-house recruiters, and not so much focusing on how recruitment can help with that, but more the outcomes of how technology has helped those recruiters. So, my name's Neil Armstrong. Yes, really. I work for a company called TribePad. I've come down here from the frozen tundra of Sheffield, so it's very nice to come and warm up in London for a day. Had some really interesting talks so far this morning. Two things I think I've learned in particular was really interesting. One is I should have grown a beard for this. And two is I should have worn leopard print by the looks of the audience as well. So there you go. A quick bit about TribePad, because many of you might not have heard of us. We're a talent acquisition software specialist. So our mission is simply to be the best talent acquisition software out there, bar none. So our applicant tracking system is our main product. That's got integrated video interviewing in it, which has artificial intelligence capabilities. It's got an integrated onboarding platform as well. And then recently, just in the last year or two, we've also developed a white label job board platform and a contractor management platform as well. So lots of our clients are working with more and more freelancers and contractors and working out how they can build that into their business processes. So we've been going about 10 years. Grown largely through recommendation and referral, which is why you probably haven't seen us at many of these forums before. This is my first one here, so please be kind to me. And we sort of took a lesson from Richard Branson when we were forming the company in terms of putting our team first. So very much believing that if we hire smart people, give them lots of autonomy, treat them really well, they'll invent really cool software and deliver really brilliant service, and that will lead to customers. So people first, product second, profit third. So in terms of who we work with, so these are a selection of some of our clients. There's at least 3 or 4 of you in the room, so hello. I haven't had a chance to say hello yet. Hello. Generally speaking, we're working with some of the UK's best-known companies, but we also work with lots and lots of smaller companies as well. There's about 14 million candidates worldwide who use TribePad systems. It's in literally every country on Earth in 12 different languages. So let's talk about topic number 1, Brexit. Boo. So whatever your political persuasions, Brexit is coming, and we know it's going to have an impact in recruitment and resourcing. So quick show of hands. Put your hands up if you've had at least some sort of conversation about the potential outcomes of Brexit and how that might affect recruitment and resourcing in your company. Okay, almost everybody. Keep your hands up if that's turned into any sort of actual formal plan and document. I can see 3, 4. Okay. So the reason I've picked this as topic number 1, right, it's not the biggest topic because obviously a lot more people would have a plan out there. One of the reasons I've picked on it is it's something that's coming up a lot from our customers, particularly in logistics, manufacturing, to some extent retail, hospitality certainly. But there's one sector in particular where this is a massive issue, and that is in healthcare. So everybody will be very, very aware. In healthcare, there's some massive trends going on at the moment that is affecting recruitment. So that is, an aging population, underinvestment in the NHS, underinvestment in education and recruiting nurses right from sort of early stage career. So one of our nursing clients has been really focusing on this problem because nursing candidates from the EU are a really important source of recruits. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So firstly, UK candidates who are applying for their jobs at the moment, only about 14% of them have the right level of nursing experience when they're applying for a role. Candidates from the EU, that goes up to 25%. So still not a huge number, but significantly different. When you then layer on professional qualifications and a relevant degree qualification in nursing, just 1% of candidates from the UK were meeting that bar, but it was 8% from the EU. So obviously the idea of suddenly seeing a drop in candidates from the EU is a really important risk to this business. So, without sharing their secrets of how they're dealing with this, obviously focusing on retaining candidates, developing staff, investing more so that they're losing fewer staff in what is an incredibly competitive environment, starting to look outside of the EU as well for other sources of candidates if there is this massive drop in EU candidates. But really, this is just one example of candidate scarcity, which is something everybody in this room will be experiencing. So we asked our customers, what are the number one things that you're focusing on this year where you think technology can help you? I think, unsurprisingly, just finding the right number of high-quality candidates is pretty much everybody's number one. Does that sort of ring true with people in the room? See a few people nodding. Good. Second was onboarding. So it's really interesting to see IBM reference that this morning about how many people are starting to look at onboarding as something that might be an area for investment in. Candidate experience, again, some of the people who've been talking this morning have been saying how important candidate experience is, particularly millennials, Generation Z, the idea of landing on some 8-year-old horrible ATS page that doesn't work on a mobile, you're just going to get drop out there and then. And then the last topic I'll touch on briefly is about diversity and inclusion. Again, been talking about that, some really interesting stuff this morning about how people are looking at diversity, not just from a gender point of view, not just from an ethnicity point of view, but diversification of thought as well, and different kinds of backgrounds, and economic background as well was mentioned on one of the tables that we were talking about earlier. Okay, so topic number one, the war for talent. So clearly this is it's a well-used phrase, and it applies at every stage of recruitment. So whether it's quite a senior specialist role, we were talking about .NET recruitment and how challenging that is, where you're fishing in a very, very small pool of extremely specialist candidates, right down to, let's say, an entry-level retail role, where that candidate hasn't necessarily dreamed of working at your company, they just want a job, and they're walking along the high street trying to find a job. So you're still competing for those candidates at the same time. And really, technology should be helping you at all stages of that funnel of getting the candidates in, keeping them warm, moving them through the process. So I'll share a couple of examples from our clients of how we're sort of working with them to do that. So starting right at the front, obviously you've got to get your message out there. So something that, very basic level, your recruitment technology should be helping you with is getting your job out as wide as possible, getting as many people into the top of the funnel as possible. So if I just use this one example, for example, from the Church of England. So previous to working with us, they didn't have an applicant tracking system at all. Their process for advertising a job was literally a piece of paper outside each church. So as you can imagine, that wasn't getting the audience they wanted. So just by something as simple as integrating with multi-posters, being able to share the job out, they're now seeing twice the number of applicants per role that they were seeing previously, and they've seen a significant increase in diversity of candidates as well. Moving a little further on from that, social media, everybody knows that this is a very important source of candidates, and increasingly so. So working with Computer Center, we built a Facebook app which integrates into their corporate Facebook page, seamlessly integrates all of the jobs that are on the applicant tracking system, makes it really, really simple to click straight through Facebook into the ATS and obviously track where those people have come from. Likewise, sharing jobs on Twitter should be a fairly basic thing that, that you're able to do with your software. And a couple of people have also then mentioned about making that process as friction-free as possible. So whether it parses your CV in from Dropbox if you're on a mobile device, or you pick it off your desktop if you're at home filling in an application, registering with Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, you want to make it as seamless as possible, because what's a very, very frequent way of looking for a job is on your phone while you're on the bus or on the train, quick register, and then perhaps go in and actually fill out the application on a desktop or a laptop or an iPad once you're at home in the evening, something like that. So if you make it really easy to do that first step, if all you capture is their name and email address, at least they're in your talent pool and you can start to nurture that lead. Once you've hopefully got the candidate past that stage and into being an applicant, again, with this war for talent where you've got huge competition, people are probably applying for 10 different jobs at the same time, delivering that candidate experience, making sure that you've kept everybody up to date and informed about what's going on. So automated emails, that's a fairly standard thing. One thing that we've found works really well with our clients is SMS, because it's so much more intrusive, makes it sound bad, but intrusive is good from this sense. So one particular client in the retail sector found that by sending an interview reminder one day before, nearly halved the number of dropouts they got from. So when you're doing volume recruitment, that is a really meaningful impact on the number of candidates who are going to make it through to the final stage. Because if anybody's got an iPhone here, you might have, however many thousand unread emails. So if you send an email reminder, it just doesn't get through. People generally don't have unread SMS on their phone, so it really, really works. It's all very well getting the candidate to the end of the stage, to the bottom of the funnel, but actually you've got to make sure that they can work for you as well. So again, something that's quite common across recruitment software is the ability to do background checks, whether that's right to work checks, ID checks, driving license checks, DBS checks, all that sort of stuff. So, seamless integration into those background checks can actually save you an awful lot of pain of getting the perfect candidate all the way to the end of the process and then finding that you actually can't employ them, or worse, you do employ them, and then you find you've got all sorts of legal consequences of having employed somebody you shouldn't have done. So, we've been working with Tesco for about 5 years now. Implemented integrated onboarding checking, and they've actually managed to reduce their time to hire by 22% by integrating onboarding checking into their recruitment software. Okay, next topic then, and a quick show of hands. Onboarding was mentioned quite a few times this morning, so when we asked our customers, about half of them said, yeah, we're intending to do some work on onboarding this year. How many people in the room are planning to do something around an onboarding platform? Let's say maybe a third, something like that. So if you can read that at the bottom, there's a page, Urban Bound, where I found this, where they've got about 100 different stats about onboarding platforms. Really useful, really interesting. What's really clear from the stats is it's a huge administrative burden for recruiters and HR in terms of onboarding new employees. At the same time, it's an opportunity to absolutely delight that new employee or frustrate the hell out of them. And as I say, I'd urge you to go and have a look at this website. There's loads of stats on there about how much more effective employees are, how quicker they are to be productive in their job, how more likely they are to stick around with you, how much more likely they are to get promoted, 2 years from now. So I'm not surprised when IBM said, there's lots and lots of investment going into the onboarding piece, particularly where there's a scarcity of talent. Once you've found it, you want to make sure they have a great experience, because the worst thing for a recruiter is find the perfect candidate, do all the work, get them there, and they fall off the table 2 weeks later and you've got to start all over again. So what you'd expect as a sort of basic side of things from an onboarding platform is it's basically about capturing information from the candidate and giving the candidate information. So in terms of capturing stuff from the candidate, please fill in your next of kin. If you've got uniform, tell us your shoe size, give us your banking details so we can add you to payroll, all that sort of stuff where you're capturing information, of course generating and offering a contract and all that sort of process. In terms of giving the candidate information, you're all about trying to make their first day perfect. So from the time you offer the job, you could have 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, depending on the role that you're hiring, where you need to be keeping that candidate informed and engaged. And you've got the opportunity to be, please read these 5 different policies. Please complete this piece of computer-based training about how we deal with health and safety in the office. Please watch this video from our CEO welcoming you, or please, lots of different things you can actually be giving to the candidate drip-fed so that you keep them engaged and warmed up. The flip side of that is for the recruiter or the HR team, whoever's responsible for onboarding, is, as I mentioned earlier, this is a massive administrative task. And it's not just about collecting information from the candidate and giving them stuff to read and acknowledge in terms of their policies. But there's also a whole load of other tasks that go along with it. Have you ordered their fob for the car park? Has somebody sorted out a desk? Has somebody sorted a laptop? Somebody adding them to the pension process. So you should be able to use these platforms to actually hand out and monitor tasks across the business to check that employee is going to arrive on day one and everything's going to be great. And then potentially follow up, 1 week reviews, 1 month later reviews, all that sort of stuff as well. So you deliver the perfect onboarding experience, basically. Auditing that is really, really important because your policies will evolve over time. So, your health and safety policy will evolve, your, computer safety policy will evolve. So it's important to be able to track which employees have agreed to which policies and be able to go back and correct things and track where somebody's missed a deadline and something's been missed. So having a journey where you can go back through and audit and update these things is really important as well. So we originally developed this for one of our clients, G4S, who we've been working with for about 8 years. They have an incredibly complicated business. They've got several 100,000 employees across about 10 different divisions. And the use case they came to us with was having an armed guard in a branch of Bank of America. And this is a relatively low-paid job. It's basically a security guard job, so it's highly competitive. But that person has to agree to something like 57 different policies before they're allowed to carry their gun into a branch of Bank of America. So trying to do that manually was just unbelievably painful. So G4S think they've saved at least £250 of pure administrative time per hire from implementing onboarding. And that doesn't count any of the time and hassle saved by other managers. It doesn't include any sort of ROI on the benefits of the employee having a better experience and any sort of longer term benefits as well. So the long and the short of it is, for the cost of about £5 a hire, there's 250 quid saved. That's a pretty easy business case to make quite quickly. Sort of the last part of onboarding, obviously, is once you've got all these policies and you've got all this information, you've got a contract, clearly you need to put that into your HR system. So having technology that is integrated seamlessly end-to-end is really, really important, because a lot of organizations are moving towards end-to-end HR systems. And from what we can see, what happens to recruiters is you just get given a fairly crappy recruitment module that you have to live with. Whereas what we see happening, particularly in the States and in larger organizations, is actually trying to put in place best-in-class software, but then maintaining that integration and end-to-end reporting capability by stitching these things together seamlessly. So we think that's really important. Okay, next topic. Anybody? Diversity. Thank you. I was hoping somebody would get it, or I was going to stand there looking really stupid. Okay, so the last topic I'll go through is some diversity initiatives that some of our clients have been working on, where technology is part of the answer. So I thought IBM's slide on the iceberg was really interesting about, the technology is the easy bit. There's actually quite a lot to do on process, but the really hard bit is people. So I had a couple of examples of that. So the first one is Sodexo, who were actually our first ever client. And again, they have quite a complicated business, lots and lots of employees in lots of different areas. But they've got a really, really strong diversity and inclusion agenda, right up to board level, really high level sponsorship, and they're making a lot of waves. One goal that they wanted to achieve last year was to achieve disability confident leader status. So they achieved that in September last year. And part of getting that was being able to show how they had evolved their process and their systems to make things easier for disabled candidates. So we worked on them in terms of looking at the data of who was getting through the process. Lots of disabled candidates do not want to declare themselves disabled at the start of the process. So they were sort of measuring things at different stages in the process was a first point. And then it was actually looking at, well, how easy is this for different kinds of disabled candidates to make it through the application process, through the interview process, and to the offer process. So we put in place some disability flags. We put in place some special journeys which would guarantee interviews for disabled candidates, and would also record reasonable adjustive measures, not just for the interview, but what they would require to be able to do the job. And there was an interesting thing here about where technology can't always solve everything. One of the roles they were looking at was a prison custody officer. And you simply can't do that job if you're in a wheelchair, right? You just can't. So what they had to do was measure, you couldn't put in one solution for everything. You actually had to have human judgment onto what's the perfect thing to do from a fairness point of view, but actually what's going to work from a business outcome point of view as well. So one of the other things we did was put in place accessible help pages and make it easier for candidates to get all the way through the system as well. Something that I think a lot of people were talking about in the roundtable sessions earlier was moving towards anonymous candidate profiles earlier in the process as well, again to try and address some issues of both conscious and unconscious bias. So we've got quite a few different customers who are already using sort of anonymous interview techniques, anonymous screening techniques, I should say. So that is, you go and hide all the stuff like name, date of birth, address, university, all that sort of stuff in the early stages of the process. It's most typical in public sector organizations, but increasingly we're seeing legal services firms, professional services, financial firms are starting to do this and adopt it as best practice. What's interesting about this is it seems to work very differently in different kinds of organizations. There's no one rule that fits everybody. What we have seen is one of the clients who are mentioned here saw an 18% increase in candidates making it through to the interview stage when they'd made the job anonymous, which sounds great. But actually, when they looked at hires, it was exactly the same. So there's a suggestion there that whatever was going wrong in the process, whether it's unconscious or unconscious bias, was getting it wasn't getting solved, it was getting pushed further down the line. So they're now looking at not just the technology, it's the training, it's the education, it's the culture of the business. But one thing that does work is obviously having this data available, so you can see that there might be a problem in this particular office, or with this particular hiring manager, you've got the data of who's actually progressing different kinds of candidates. So you can see if there's a problem there culturally, or if there's a problem there with individuals. So looking sort of forward into the future a bit more. So this is a screenshot of our video interviewing platform. So already what we do is we're actually integrated to Alexa so that we analyze the video, turn that into a text transcript so that you can read it, closed captions as it goes along, and you can get a download of what the candidate said afterwards. So that gives you this little tag cloud on the right where you can actually go and zoom in on a particular word that you found interesting. So perhaps you set a question where you say, right, well, the perfect candidate would say customer service. You can go click on customer service and jump straight into that. Again, working with the BBC in particular, they have this aim of doing a video interview that nobody watches. So I'll say that again. It's a video interview that nobody watches. So the idea of this is around addressing concerns to do with D&I around the video interview. Well, surely people are going to make discriminatory decisions, conscious or unconscious, when they watch the video about that person. Quite possibly. They probably make the same sorts of decisions if they're doing a phone interview, because you've got to know the person's name and you're going to hear their voice. You might have some sort of bias towards that already. What you do get from video interviewing is obviously a massive amount of time, logistical time saved in arranging loads and loads of phone interviews, which is a pain in the neck. But what you also get is a guarantee that every candidate has been given the question in exactly the same way and has had exactly the same opportunity to answer it. You also get a complete record of everything. So again, you can compare, doing panel scoring, you can see who is rating female candidates lower than male candidates, or Afro-Caribbean candidates consistently lower than their peers, or something like that. So you can actually identify and measure the problems. Who here's got Alexa at home? Wow, okay, Alexa's doing well. So one of the challenges at the moment that you'll know, Alexa's about 90% right on a good day in a quiet room if you've got a perfect BBC accent. As soon as you go into other accents, which could be Northeast, could be South Wales, could be different ethnic background, she gets less accurate. No two ways about it. So the reason I say this is a sort of a future, near future development is, yes, you can get a text transcript at the moment, which is pretty accurate. But if you were actually going to give somebody that transcript to make a hiring decision on without them actually seeing the person's lips move and hear it, and Alexa's only getting it 85% right, I wouldn't want to make a hiring decision on that just yet. But I think that's probably in the very, very near future. So I'll close really just with a conclusion, which is, hopefully you've already seen from other speakers today, there is absolutely tons of really good recruitment technology out there. So you absolutely shouldn't put up with crap. There's tons of choice out there. And actually, in terms of building a business case, there's some really clear ways to build a business case. And particularly in HR, it's hard to get budget. In recruitment, it's harder still to get budget from finance and IT. So what I would say is, there's lots of data that we can help with, and other suppliers can help with in terms of helping you build that business case, because it's actually really quite easy to demonstrate, really clear ROI. So thank you very much for your attention. Really looking forward to the roundtable sessions.